Good day, my friends. I want to encourage you today. What may look like a detour in your life is not a mistake. It's not an accident. It's a divine detour. You had a plan. You mapped out how things were supposed to go. You thought you'd be further along by now, but life threw you a curveball. The promotion didn't happen. The relationship didn't work out. The business deal fell through. And now you're wondering, God, what happened? Did I miss it? Did I take a wrong turn? Let me tell you, you are right where you're supposed to be. God is not surprised by the detour. He didn't look down from heaven and say, oh no, they got off track. No, the detour was part of His plan all along. See, we pray for open doors, but sometimes God answers with a closed one. We ask Him for a straight path, but sometimes He takes us the long way around. Not to delay us, but to develop us. Not to punish us, but to... Think about Joseph. He had a dream of ruling a nation, but before he could wear the robe of royalty, he had to wear the chains of a prisoner. He went from the pit to the prison before he ever made it to the palace. The detour was the route to his destiny. Maybe you've been fighting a delay, frustrated over a setback. But what if that closed door is really God's protection? What if the relationship that didn't work out was actually saving you from heartache? What if the job that didn't hire you was keeping you free for something far greater? I've learned that when it looks like things are falling apart, they're really falling into place. You may not see it now, but one day you'll look back and say, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I want to encourage you. Don't fight the detour. Embrace it. Trust it. Know that God is leading you to something better than you imagined. Stay in faith. Keep moving forward and watch how He turns your detour into a divine destination. God bless you. God's plan is always bigger than our plans. We make schedules, set goals, and map out how we think life should unfold. We expect things to go in a straight line, graduate by this age, get married by that age, land the dream job, start the business, buy the house, and enjoy a smooth journey. But life doesn't always follow our script. Just when we think we have it all figured out, an unexpected turn comes. A setback at work, a relationship that ends, a financial struggle, or a delay in something we've been believing for. It can feel frustrating, even discouraging, because we don't see the full picture. What we have to remember is that God sees the beginning from the end. He knows where He's taking us, and sometimes the route to our destiny isn't a straight path. It's full of detours, unexpected changes, and delays that at the moment don't make sense. But those detours are not accidents. They are divine directions. They are part of a greater plan that is far beyond what we can imagine. Think about a GPS. When you put in a destination, it calculates the fastest route. But if there's construction, an accident, or heavy traffic ahead, it may reroute you. The detour might take you through unfamiliar roads, longer stretches, and unexpected turns. You may wonder, why am I going this way? This doesn't make sense. But the system knows what you don't. It's leading you away from trouble and toward a smoother journey. In the same way, when God redirects our path, we don't always understand it. We think, God, this isn't what I prayed for. This isn't what I planned. But God knows the obstacles up ahead, and He's taking us the best route, not the fastest, not the easiest, but the one that will get us to our destiny at the right time. In the Bible, there's a story of the Israelites leaving Egypt. They were finally free after years of slavery, and they were heading to the Promised Land. But instead of taking them on the direct route, God led them the long way around. He didn't do it to frustrate them. He did it to protect them. He knew that if they faced war too soon, they would get discouraged and turn back. The longer path was necessary to prepare them for where they were going. The same is true for us sometimes. We think we're ready for the next level, But God knows we need more preparation. He sees what's up ahead. If He allowed us to step into something before we were ready, it could overwhelm us. The detour isn't a delay, it's a divine setup for something greater. Maybe you had a plan for your career and you thought by now you'd be in a certain position, but it hasn't happened yet. Maybe you've been praying for a relationship and the right person hasn't come along. Maybe you started a business and instead of taking off, it's been a struggle. You could be tempted to get discouraged, to think something is wrong. What if He's keeping you from settling for something less than is best? What if He's preparing something bigger, something that will exceed your expectations? I know a young man who had a dream of playing professional sports. He worked hard, trained for years, and was on his way. But just before his big break, he suffered a major injury. It seemed like the end of his dream. He was devastated, questioning why it happened. But during his recovery, he discovered a passion for coaching. He started mentoring younger players, sharing his knowledge and experience. Over time, he built a successful career, not as a player, but as a highly respected coach, impacting lives in a way he never imagined. The injury wasn't the end, it was a divine detour, leading him to something even greater. The challenge is trusting God when we don't understand. It's easy to have faith when everything is going according to plan, but real faith is believing that even the detours are working for our good. It's saying, God, I don't see it yet, but I trust you. I believe that this setback is really a setup, that what looks like a disappointment is actually leading me to something better. We have to let go of our timelines, our expectations, and our need to control everything. God's ways are higher than our ways. What He has planned for you is bigger, better, and beyond anything you could ask or imagine. So when the detours come, instead of getting discouraged, shift your perspective. See them as divine direction, as a sign that God is leading you to something greater. Keep trusting, keep moving forward, and one day you'll look back and realize that every delay, every closed door, and every unexpected turn was all part of His perfect plan. We live in a world that values speed. We want things to happen now, on our schedule, in our timing. If something takes longer than we expected, we assume something is wrong. But one of the most important lessons we can learn in life is this: a delay is not a denial. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. God's timing is always perfect, and when He makes us wait, it's for a reason. Think about a farmer planting seeds. He prepares the soil, plants the seed, waters it, and then waits. He doesn't panic when he doesn't see results overnight. He doesn't dig up the seed to check if it's growing. He trusts the process. He knows that just because he doesn't see anything happening above the ground doesn't mean the seed isn't taking root below the surface. The same is true for us. Sometimes we're waiting on a promise, waiting on a breakthrough, waiting for things to change, and when nothing seems to be happening, it's easy to get discouraged. But just because you don't see anything on the surface doesn't mean God isn't working beneath the surface. The roots are growing, the foundation is being built, the right doors are lining up. If you stay in faith, what was planted in your life will come to pass in the right season. Think about Joseph. He had a dream that he would one day rule a nation, but instead of stepping into that promise immediately, he went through years of setbacks. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If anyone had a reason to give up, it was Joseph. He could have thought, God, you gave me this dream, but all I see is disappointment. Maybe I heard wrong. Maybe it's never going to happen. But what Joseph didn't realize was that every delay was part of the process. Every setback was actually setting him up. If he had gone straight to the throne, he wouldn't have been prepared for the responsibility. He had to go through the detours to develop the character, wisdom, and strength he needed to handle the blessing. You may be in a season of waiting right now. You've prayed, you've believed, you've done the right thing, but nothing seems to be changing. The medical report hasn't improved, the promotion hasn't come. The dream is taking longer than you thought. Can I encourage you? Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not on the way. Don't mistake a delay for a denial. God is still on the throne. He hasn't forgotten about you. He's not ignoring your prayers. He's working behind the scenes, lining up the right people, preparing the right opportunity, and making sure everything is in place for you to step into what He has for you. I heard about a couple who had been trying to have a baby for years. They prayed, went to doctors, and did everything they could, but nothing worked. It was one disappointment after another. But instead of giving up, they held on to their faith. They believed that what God started, He would finish. Years later, against all odds, they had a healthy baby. Looking back, they realized that if it had happened in their timing, they wouldn't have been in the place they were now, stronger, wiser, more prepared to be parents. God's delays are always for a purpose. Sometimes He delays something because we're not ready yet. Sometimes He delays it because the blessing isn't ready yet. Just like a baby needs 9 months to develop before birth, certain dreams, opportunities, and breakthroughs need time to mature. If you rush the process, you might step into something before it's fully developed. The key is to stay in faith while you wait. Instead of getting frustrated, learn to trust God's timing. Instead of complaining, start thanking Him in advance. Say, Lord, I may not see it yet, but I know You are working. I know the delay is part of Your plan. I trust that what You promised will come to pass at the right time. When you live with that kind of faith, you won't be discouraged when things take longer than expected. You won't give up just because it hasn't happened yet. You'll know that a delay is not a denial. It's just God's way of saying, I'm getting everything in place. I'm making sure when it happens, it will be better than you imagine. So keep believing, keep trusting, and keep waiting with expectation. What God started in your life, He will finish. The delay is just a setup for something greater than you can see right now. Stay in faith, because your time is coming. Obstacles lead to opportunities. We all face obstacles in life, challenges that seem unfair, setbacks that feel like roadblocks, and disappointments that shake our confidence. It's easy to look at these obstacles as the enemy, as things standing in the way of our progress. But what if I told you that the very thing that looks like it's holding you back is actually pushing you forward? What if the obstacle is not a stop sign, but a stepping stone to your destiny? Many times what we see as a problem is really an opportunity in disguise. God doesn't allow challenges in our lives to defeat us. He allows them to develop us. He uses difficulties to stretch our faith, grow our character, and position us for something greater. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, how is this working for me? Because when you shift your perspective, you'll realize that every obstacle carries an opportunity for growth, for promotion, and for purpose. Think about David. He was just a shepherd boy taking care of his father's sheep. He wasn't in line to be king. He wasn't trained as a warrior. But one day, a giant named Goliath stood before the Israelite army, and no one was willing to fight him. That looked like an obstacle. But for David, it was an opportunity. See, if Goliath had never appeared, David would have never stepped into his destiny. That one battle changed everything. He went from being unknown to being celebrated. He went from a shepherd boy to a national hero, but he wouldn't have gotten there without an obstacle. Maybe there's a giant in front of you right now, a challenge that seems too big, a situation that feels impossible. But what if that giant is the key to your next level? What if the obstacle is actually the doorway to your breakthrough? I know a young woman who worked at a company for years, hoping for a promotion. She was faithful, diligent, and always gave her best. But when the time came for a leadership position to open, she was passed over. It was discouraging. She felt overlooked, like all her hard work was for nothing. But instead of getting bitter, she used the experience as fuel. She started developing new skills, growing in leadership, and expanding her vision. A few months later, a better opportunity came, not at that company, but somewhere else, where she was valued, promoted, and given more than she ever expected. Looking back, she realized that the obstacle, the rejection, was actually an opportunity in disguise. If she had gotten comfortable, she never would have moved into something better. Sometimes God will close a door not to punish you, but to push you. He will allow obstacles not to hold you back, but to stretch you and lead you to something greater. That difficulty at work, that unexpected setback, that challenge in your finances, it's not there to stop you, it's there to promote you. The key is to keep the right attitude. Instead of getting frustrated, start seeing obstacles as opportunities. Start declaring, this challenge is not here to defeat me, it's here to develop me. This closed door is not rejection, it's redirection. This delay is not a setback, it's a setup for something better. God is strategic. He wouldn't allow an obstacle if it wasn't going to work for your good. When you face difficulties, don't shrink back in fear. Rise up in faith. Just like David, just like Joseph, just like so many before you, what looks like your greatest challenge may turn out to be your greatest opportunity. So don't give up in the middle of the obstacle. Keep pressing forward, keep trusting, and keep believing. Because when you do, you'll see that the very thing that seemed like it was standing in your way was actually leading you straight into your destiny. No purpose. One of the hardest things in life is trusting the process when we don't understand the plan. It's easy to have faith when everything is going our way, when doors are opening, prayers are being answered, and we can see progress. But real faith is believing even when there's no sign of change, even when life seems to be taking unexpected turns, and even when it feels like we're stuck in a season of waiting. God's ways are higher than our ways. He sees the full picture, while we only see a small part. What looks like a delay, a setback, or even a failure to us is often part of a bigger plan that we can't see yet. The challenge is trusting God even when we don't understand, believing that He is working all things together for our good, even when it doesn't make sense. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark because a great flood was coming. The problem was there was no sign of rain. Year after year, Noah kept building while people laughed at him, ridiculed him, and called him crazy. If he had based his faith on what he could see, he would have given up. But he trusted the process. He believed that if God said it, it would happen. And sure enough, at the right time, the rain came, and Noah's obedience saved his family and secured his future. Maybe you're in a situation right now where you don't see any sign of progress. You've been working hard, staying faithful, doing the right thing, but nothing seems to be changing. You're still single, the promotion hasn't come, the dream hasn't happened. It's easy to think, God, where are you? Why is this taking so long? But just because you don't see anything happening doesn't mean God isn't working. Behind the scenes, He's moving things into place, lining up the right people and preparing you for what's next. Faith is trusting the process even when we don't see the progress. Joseph had a dream that he would one day be a great leader, but before he could step into that promise, he was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Year after year, it seemed like he was moving further from his destiny instead of closer. But Joseph never lost faith. He didn't let disappointment make him bitter. He trusted the process. And when the time was right, in one moment, God turned everything around. He went from being a prisoner to being the second in command over all of Egypt. Looking back, Joseph could see that every step, even the painful ones, was part of the plan. If his brothers had never sold him, he wouldn't have ended up in Egypt. If he hadn't been falsely accused, he wouldn't have met the person who connected him to Pharaoh. Every delay, every setback, every disappointment was actually leading him to his destiny. You may not understand everything you're going through right now. You may feel like things aren't happening the way you planned, but God is not making a mistake. He is working behind the scenes in ways you can't see. You just have to trust the process. Instead of getting discouraged, start saying, God, I may not understand it, but I trust you. I know you are ordering my steps. I know that what you started in my life, you will finish. When you live with that kind of faith, you won't be frustrated by delays, detours, or disappointments. You'll have peace in the waiting, confidence in the process, and assurance that at the right time, in the right way, everything will come together just as God planned. So don't lose faith. Don't let doubt creep in. Your story isn't over. Keep trusting, keep believing, and watch how God turns the process into a promise fulfilled. Closed doors are leading you to the right one. We've all faced moments in life when a door we desperately wanted to walk through suddenly closed. Maybe you applied for a job you thought was perfect, but they hired someone else. Maybe you were in a relationship that seemed like it was leading to marriage, but it unexpectedly ended. Maybe you put your heart into a business idea, but it didn't take off the way you hoped. In those moments, it's easy to feel disappointed, frustrated, and even question God. But here's what I've learned. A closed door is not the end. It's often God's way of redirecting you to something better. That job that didn't work out, maybe God was protecting you from a toxic environment. That relationship that ended, maybe God was removing the wrong person so He could bring the right one. That opportunity that fell through, maybe it wasn't your best and God has something far greater ahead. Sometimes God closes doors not to punish us, but to protect us. He knows what's up ahead. He sees the full picture and He knows where we're supposed to be. If we could see what He sees, we would thank Him for every closed door, every disappointment, every time something didn't work out the way we wanted. Think about Paul in the Bible. He had a strong desire to preach the gospel in Asia. He planned to go there, but the Bible says the Holy Spirit kept him from going. That door was closed. Later, Paul received a vision directing him to Macedonia, and when he arrived, he found people ready and waiting to receive the message. Had he forced his way into Asia, he would have missed the divine opportunity that was waiting for him in Macedonia. See, if Paul had only focused on the closed door, he would have missed the open door God had prepared. And the same is true for us. Too often, we get stuck on what didn't work out. We keep looking at the closed door, wondering what went wrong, when God is saying, I closed that because I have something better. Stop crying over what didn't happen and start looking for where I'm leading you next. I heard about a man who had his heart set on getting a certain position at his company. He had the experience, he had the skills, and he thought for sure it was his. But when they announced the promotion, someone else got it. He was so discouraged, thinking, God, I don't understand. I worked so hard for this. Why didn't it happen? A few months later, an even better job opened up at another company. Not only was it a higher position, but it paid more and had better opportunities for growth. If he had gotten the first job, he never would have been available for the better one. Looking back, he realized that what he thought was a setback was actually a setup for something greater. Maybe you're in a season right now where a door has closed. Maybe something you prayed for didn't happen. Can I encourage you? That closed door is not the end of your story. It's just God redirecting you. He's positioning you for something greater. You may not see it yet, but every no is leading to a better yes. Instead of being discouraged, start trusting that God knows what He's doing. Start thanking Him, even for the closed doors. Say, God, I may not understand it now, but I trust You. I know You are guiding my steps. I know You are leading me to the right opportunities, the right people, and the right doors. When you keep the right perspective, you won't waste time being frustrated over what didn't work out. You'll keep moving forward knowing that God's plan is always better than your plan. And when the right door opens, you'll see why every other door had to close. So don't get stuck on the disappointment. Don't live in frustration over what didn't happen. The closed door is not a rejection, it's a redirection. God is leading you somewhere better. Keep trusting, keep believing, and get ready, because the right door is about to open. Divine detours lead to your destiny. Life doesn't always take us in a straight line. We make plans, set goals, and think we know exactly how things should unfold, but then out of nowhere we hit a detour. The relationship doesn't work out. The business deal falls through. The opportunity we were counting on suddenly disappears. In those moments, it's easy to feel frustrated and think, this wasn't supposed to happen. I was headed in the right direction. Why the setback? But what if I told you that the detour isn't taking you off course? It's actually leading you to where you're supposed to be. The delays, the unexpected turns, the roadblocks, they're not accidents. They're divine detours, carefully orchestrated by God to get you to your destiny in the best way possible. Think about Moses. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, educated, trained, and positioned for greatness. He probably thought he was going to deliver his people from oppression from inside the royal courts. But after one decision, defending a Hebrew slave, he found himself on a detour. He went from the palace to the wilderness, from power to exile, from being a prince to tending sheep. For years, it looked like Moses had missed his destiny. But in reality, the detour was part of God's plan. It was in the wilderness that Moses met God in the burning bush. It was in the wilderness that he was prepared for leadership. If Moses had stayed in the palace, he would have never been ready to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. What looked like a setback was actually a setup for something greater. Maybe you're in a season right now where life hasn't gone the way you expected. You thought you would be further along. You thought the opportunity would have come by now. But let me encourage you, God's detours are always strategic. He's not making a mistake. The route may be different than what you planned, but the destination is still the same. I heard about a woman who worked in a corporate job for years, expecting to climb the ladder and eventually land an executive role. She was hardworking, dedicated, and had a clear vision for where she was headed. But unexpectedly, her department was eliminated and she lost her job. It was a huge setback. She didn't understand why it happened. But instead of staying discouraged, she kept believing. She started a small business on the side, something she had always dreamed about but never pursued because she was so focused on climbing the corporate ladder. Within a few years, that business grew beyond what she ever imagined, giving her more success, freedom, and purpose than she had before. Looking back, she realized that what she thought was a detour was actually the best thing that ever happened to her. Sometimes we don't see the purpose in the detour until later. We think, why did I have to go through that heartbreak? Why did I lose that job? Why did that door close? But God sees the bigger picture. He knows that if He took you straight to your destination, you wouldn't be ready for it. The detour is where He prepares you, strengthens you, and equips you for what's coming. When you find yourself on an unexpected path, don't get discouraged. Don't start thinking you've missed your chance. The detour is not a mistake. It's divine. It may feel like you're going the long way around, but in reality, you're right on track. Instead of fighting the detour, embrace it. Say, God, I don't understand this, but I trust you. I know you're leading me. I know you're working all things together for my good. When you keep the right perspective, you won't see the detour as a disappointment. You'll see it as a setup. You'll stay in faith, knowing that God wouldn't have allowed the detour if it wasn't taking you somewhere greater. So don't be discouraged by the delays, the setbacks, or the unexpected turns. The detour is not taking you off course. It's leading you straight to your destiny. Keep trusting, keep believing, and watch how God uses every unexpected turn to bring you exactly where you're meant to be. Trust the journey. Even when life takes unexpected turns, remember that every detour is part of a greater plan. Stay faithful, keep believing, and trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Obstacles are not the end. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something better. Instead of getting discouraged, look for the opportunity in every challenge. Faith over frustration. You may not see the full picture yet, but God is working behind the scenes. Choose faith over frustration and know that the right doors will open at the right time. Closed doors lead to greater doors. Don't dwell on what didn't work out. If one door closed, it's because a better one is on the way. Stay expectant and ready for what's next. The detour is divine. Life may not go as planned, but that doesn't mean you're off course. Every delay, every turn, and every challenge is leading you to something greater than you imagined. Stay in faith and keep moving forward. No matter what comes your way, don't give up. Keep pressing forward, knowing that your best days are still ahead.